Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning. This is the Man vs. Mood podcast. I am your host, Will, joined today by my good friend, Mike.
What is up?
There he is. He finally brought the heat. And today we have a very special guest with us. Gary is sitting with us today as our very special guest, as I just said, because I like to repeat myself. Gary, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to be here. Thank you guys for having me on.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is exciting for us as you are our first guest.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And
I'm going to pat myself on the back.
You should pat yourself. Well, some people say that. No, I'm not going to say, and no anyone says anything, but it is very nice to have a guest. And as always, we're reaching into the mental health status of men, and to have another voice. Mike and I have talked many times about mental health, but to have another viewpoint on it, to have another person's take is something that I have been very excited about, and I know Mike has as well. With that being said, do you want to give us a little background on yourself? What leads you to sitting in the chair with us?
Yeah, so what leads me here, me and Mike, we used to work together 7-8 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, it was about 7-ish,
and I don't know, we kind of just worked together, and at that time, Mike had a bad back.
I hurt my back on the job, which I'm not sad about now because I'm doing what I love, real estate, but anyway.
So yeah, me and him met, and I kind of did like a ride along with him, and I just basically just found that Mike's like a really good dude, and just for me, I feel like I have a pretty good judgment of character and stuff like that, so I got a decent little taste of him, and we became to be friends, and I really found out that we were better friends than I thought when he finally gave me his recipe for the ribs.
Oh, wow.
Did I give you the recipe?
You did.
He just friended me for my ribs. I'm telling you.
Hey, I have been used for my food before, so I know exactly what you're talking about. That's awesome. Well, as we always start each podcast, what is something that we're blessed, that we're grateful for? And since you're first up, Gary, what is something that you are grateful for? It doesn't have to be anything exciting. It could be that somebody gave you a compliment.
I mean, honestly, I'm thankful just to be 37. I'm thankful for growth. I feel like I've learned a lot, especially over the pandemic, and I've changed a lot. And I just think that, I'm grateful to understand that, I am not perfect, and I have things that I have to work on, and, I'm ever changing, and just, want to get better and stuff like that. And just not a lot of people can admit that,
That's why we're sitting here, and that's why we have this kind of mentality of let's talk about it openly, because I think the vast majority of guys are exactly in your shoes, my shoes, and Mike's, which is for many years we hid it.
Yeah.
And now we're finally coming to this realization that if we're open with ourselves and with others to a degree, then we're going to be able to make positive steps forward that we probably didn't even think maybe 5-10 years ago we were capable of. So that's awesome. Mike, what's something that you are grateful for?
I'm grateful that Gary's here, man. That is awesome. I haven't seen him in a couple of years. We were kind of talking about that before we got on here, but it's just good to see you, man. I'm glad you're here
too, man. Thank you.
And I will second that. It is exciting to have a guest. It provides another dynamic that, as a host, is exciting because I can go in even more paths. And when we're dealing with brains, like I said when we sat down, I have a whole bunch of questions, but I bet you I get to 3 or 4 of them out of the whole thing when we really get into it. But something I am pretty grateful for is that my youngest son plays football for Washougal High School, and he got pulled up to varsity for the final game, and
nice.
He may actually get to start. So he's had a really good week of practice. So the coaches are thrilled with that.
What position did you play?
He is a defensive tackle and an offensive tackle as well, but he's going to get the run at defensive tackle. That's
exciting.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. He thought he was going to be playing varsity the entire year, and they actually decided to get him more playing time by leaving him on JV. Now they've pulled him up for this game. They pulled him up for practice before, but this is the real deal. They're playing Hawkinson, who is the number 1 team in the league.
Oh, wow.
So he's
maybe you can put some hurt on him.
Well, that's what he's hoping, but he's he's dealing with the nerves right now
Yeah.
because this is the first time under the lights. This
Yeah.
is the whole, varsity football experience. And to go from JV, where you don't even get to go into the locker room at halftime, to the pomp and circumstance and all of that stuff. And they're actually playing at Camas. So,
Playing the best team though too. Jeez.
well, yeah, they're playing
Hawkinson,
Hawkinson,
man.
but they've got one of his coaches actually is a teacher there. And I don't know if he's trying to psych him out or if he's being legit, but he said, they're all 5 of them across the line are big boys, so you're going to have to pack a lunch. So it psychs him out a little bit, but it's good for him. It's, we talk about mental health, and a lot of things that we discuss here or in, kind of all Mike and I's discussions in the past, I try to, I impart on him in a way that he can consume. I'm not going to, a 15-year-old, I don't expect him to kind of have the high level thinking that we do, but it's, you got to start. And these are the types of challenges that really can set us apart in terms of our, future success. When you have something that you're freaked out about, but you can say, nope, I did my homework.
Yeah.
I lifted the weights back in June, or did the sprints, or whatever it might be. So, well, today's show, we want to tackle something that I know I'm very familiar with, and from the discussions very short before we started recording, is granting ourselves permission to succeed. And this is something that I think a lot of guys struggle with mightily. Women maybe not as much, and as I did research for this, that kind of was reflected in that. But for me, I know that I will start to succeed on something, and more in terms of whether it's business or personal, I will sabotage myself. I've struggled with weight my entire life, and I finally kind of nipped that in the bud. Gary probably doesn't know, but I used to weigh over 400 pounds.
Wow.
And now I don't, and I'm very dedicated to not being that ever again. But I have, in the real estate world, I probably should have been 5-10 times the broker I was, but I didn't like the feeling of being very successful. I know it sounds counterintuitive and very weird, but none of it has ever been about money. So what is, Gary, something for you that if you think back to it, is that something that you have ever struggled with where you're like, I know I should have accomplished more, or I could have done better than that, but you held yourself back, kind of reining your own ego in, or whatever it might be?
Yeah, so I think for me, like I grew up playing sports, like I love tennis.
Really?
Like I tried to start a tennis team when I was in high school, but the school was just like, no, we're not going to have a tennis team. Like, we're not doing that. So then I played football and basketball and stuff. And like, it's interesting just listening to you talk about your son, because I played football in high school too. And one of the like vivid things that like always rings in my head is like something that a coach actually told me.
Right.
And we were just about to start practice, and like for me, something that's always held me back is, something that I kind of see in my son. I have a 16-year-old son now, and he's a big kid, and he plays basketball for a local high school in Portland, and I see so much of myself in him, and it's so interesting because I try to talk to him and explain things to him, and he just doesn't want to listen to what I have to say because I'm his dad, right? But
funny how that works.
Yeah,
Right,
we
right.
all sit back here
Right.
as fathers of sons and know exactly what you're talking about.
and it's so funny because it's like I'll tell him things, but then he just won't listen. But then his coach will tell him something. He'll be like, "Dad, my coach said this, this, and this," and I'm like, "You don't say. That's so wild." But
That we talked about this last week.
Yeah. It's so crazy. But yeah, I mean, something, just to kind of touch on it. So I was probably a sophomore, and we were just about to start practice, and one of the coaches actually told me in front of the entire team. He calls me over and he goes, "Hey, GH, Gary, hey, come over here." So like I walk over to him or whatever, and he goes, "I'm gonna trade you for a goat and shoot the goat," right? And like
He said that?
yeah, like he said
Wow.
that in front of everybody, right?
The entire
the entire team.
Wow.
And at the time, I'm 15, and I'm kind of thinking like, I don't know, like it was kind of funny. And then like for the rest of like school, like sophomore year, junior year, senior year, like everybody called me the GOAT. Not
Really?
like the greatest of all time GOAT, but the GOAT that got shot, right? And you know, for me, that was kind of something that always, you know, stuck with me. You know, like I went on to play basketball like at a college level. Like I played at both the schools that I played at, you know, were both in Portland, just small schools and stuff. And that was something that I always held myself back in. You know?
Why do you think he said that? Maybe unpack that a little bit.
He said that just to try to motivate me, I think, right? But it wasn't a good way to motivate me, because I ended up quitting the team like a week later or something like that. Like it was on the day of a game too, and like I was supposed to be the like starting cornerback or whatever.
Really?
And just I woke up that day and I was just always just dwelling on it and just thinking on it, you know? And that was something that I really didn't unpack or whatever until later in life, you know?
Yeah.
Something that I kind of just had to let go of.
Well, and you have a leadership figure, somebody a mentor figure. I mean, coaches are a lot of times, like you said, you make a connection with a kid that a parent, even though they hear us and they will take in the information, they don't put us on the pedestal that a coach, because a coach controls a lot of things in their life. And I mean, I have had some pretty crazy things said to me in my time by coaches, but I mean, there's a lot of ways that he could have taken that, but the shooting part is what I'm sure you probably dwelled on.
Well, you're
like,
how old are you now?
37 now.
So 37, it stuck with you for 21 years.
22 years.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and it's just crazy because I mean, like, just for him to say that in front of the whole team, and just everybody just broke down and they were just dying laughing. Right?
It's crazy how much words have so much power, especially when it comes from someone that you look up to as a coach or a mentor or whatever, you know, or even as a parent.
Yeah,
words have power.
Oh,
yeah,
huge
like,
power.
And this guy, like, he was like deemed as like, you know, the cool coach. Like he like said that he played minor league baseball for somebody, and then like he was just that coach and teacher that like all the girls liked, like all the guys, you know, wanted to be like and stuff like that, you know. You know, he was a black coach too, you know. So like I felt like he shouldn't have done that.
Well, yeah, and that's, you know, that's an interesting thing to bring up, is if there is a racial divide there or a component to it at all. And I as you said that, it kind of caught me off guard, because I'm trying to find a way that makes even sense in any type of football context or anything. Like, why would you say something like that? And maybe it was a slip of the words, but that's certainly giving him a lot of leeway that he does not deserve, because there is no context that would make any sense. And for him to not maybe pull you aside and say, hey, man, I fucked that up. I shouldn't have said that.
No, like he never apologized. Never apologized. You know, like I probably seen him, you know, a handful of times after that, but you know, he never pulled me aside and said anything. Like he just basically, you know, just kept it moving. And
it didn't click to him.
Yeah.
And if he's the one in the school that people are looking up to, that are, you know, whether it's guys or gals, however that might be, that gives you a little bit of an ego and a complex that, I am the man.
Oh yeah. Like nobody was going to go up to this guy and check him, you know, like this was 2001 or something like that, you know.
Before anything, you know, mental health wise had come to the forefront. I mean, back in 2001, we were still treating it like the late 70s, which is 3 fingers of Glenlivet and bury your face in the pillow type thing. You know, that's how we dealt with mental health issues.
And now you look at it, and that's the true definition of toxic masculinity.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I can't wrap my head around it. There's a lot of ways that we can motivate people, but being killed is not one that I've ever, other than like, I'm going to kill you if you don't do something, but that doesn't make any sense to me. And, you know, we see a lot of, whether it's toxic masculinity or whatever it might be in the sports world. Yeah. And there are a lot of egos and things like that come into play, but that doesn't make much sense. So hopefully he's kind of, maybe he was embarrassed. I don't know, but I'm not, and I certainly don't want to excuse that, because That is something that I've never heard in all of my years and being very involved in sports and motivating people and whatnot.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry you had to go
Yeah.
through that. That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, like the thing about it is just like you said, like I really wasn't thinking about, mental health, or, like I really wasn't thinking about, like at the age of 15 or 16 of, when I'm 37, I'm still going to be, dwelling on that and thinking on that and stuff like that. And it's interesting now, that I've been going to therapy and stuff, that like, I look back on that child and, like at that time, like I'd be kind of angry at myself that I wouldn't defend myself and like lash back at him or something. But it's like now, like I look at it as he was obviously hurt, and, he had some things happen to him. Somebody probably said that to him too.
And he's projecting it onto you because
Exactly.
you are in a position that he can take advantage of that situation, which is I have power over you. And we see that in a lot of different dynamics. Mike, is there I don't think that either one of us has a story, at least I don't. I mean, I've had some really shitty things said to me, but nothing on that type of level. But
I have a question for you, Gary.
Yeah, go.
So going in high school, were you one of the only black kids on the team?
Oh, definitely.
Because I know you mentioned that he was a black coach. So were you kind of one of the minorities on the team?
Definitely. And I think for me, like at that time, and that's why like I wanted my son just to go to like a PIL school, so it's more diverse. And so, like he's just not thrown into that, because, for me, like I was born and raised basically like in Milwaukee, Oregon. And like at that time, it was just the home of Tanya Harding, like
I forgot she
I
lived
know
there.
Tanya Harding. I have.
That doesn't surprise me. Well,
She
that
has
does not surprise me.
pulled my truck out of the sand. I know
Wow.
she has gone on vacation with my family.
Yeah.
That's how well I know her.
Wow.
So I'm sorry, total aside, but go ahead.
Anyways, forget about Tanya. Let's talk about Gary.
So yeah, and just for me, just basically, just being like in that environment, so again, it's things that I didn't really think about, as a child, but now that I'm grown, I'm like, man, like I was probably like one of 3 or 4 black people. And, that was like the only black coach that I had ever seen, like at that point too, because it was just different. So like I say, like that's, why like I wanted my son to go to like a PIL school, where it's more diverse. Because I think, like at certain times then too, like I was a minority, like in so many different facets, like I'm African American, but, I have freckles, I have a soft voice, like I don't look like, like people would think, or, whatever. And, just at that time, just being there, sometimes it was kind of different and weird, and just not fully loving myself or like appreciating myself, because I was the only black person.
Yeah, it's not some. I mean, I can relate to a degree because I don't have a hand, and so when people see that, it can be striking. But for you, you made a connection with a coach that you figured that you were going to have even a closer bond than possibly another coach.
Yeah,
that had to have set you. I mean, I'm not going to say set you back, but that had to have put you into a headspace that questioned a lot of different things. And, talking about not granting yourself permission just to say, hey, coach, not in front of everyone, but to pull him aside and say, that really hurt. And you alluded to that just a moment ago when you said that, 22 years later, you think back, you're like, why didn't I stick up for myself?
definitely.
Is sticking up for yourself something that you found to be tough when you were in high school or when you were younger in your formative years?
Yeah. So for me, like I was raised by my grandparents.
Oh, okay.
My grandma was born and raised in Astoria, Oregon. So I mean, for me to go there, I was the only black person there, like ever.
You and Jordan Poyer.
Yeah, right. And like the thing about it is like I never even really thought about race or anything until I got to be like a teenager or whatever. And like I grew up shooting guns and riding quads and 4-wheelers and this and that, whatever else. But so I just think that I never really thought about it or or got exposed to it, until later in life. And my grandparents got custody of me when I was probably like 8 or 9 or something like that. And so until that point, like I was being brought up like in Northeast Portland. I mean, like it was a little different. So I went from that environment where it was more diverse to Milwaukee, to where I was like,
which is very white.
Yeah. And then I was, I was a kid, and I was honestly probably, one of the first black kids that like some of these people seen.
Yeah.
So, people are walking up to me and they're saying like, man, I've never seen a black person, and you have freckles and this and that, whatever else, and I found myself lashing out and fighting a lot.
Really?
And, because kids, come up and call me a nigger with a hard R.
Yep.
And I'm just like, I have to fight, So like I would fight multiple times, per week.
Really?
And I was always in the principal's office and just always, bitter and angry and all these things. And so to finally, get past all that, get through grade school, get through junior high, and get to high school and have this black coach, I was like so happy. But then that happened, and I'm just like, damn, like let down again. I'm just like, damn, like I got let down again, by, circumstances or whatever. So I mean, that definitely set me back.
But it's not circumstance.
Yeah.
There was.
He was lashing out for something.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And whether that's maybe he felt intimidated by you.
Yeah.
A question that I had based on what you just shared, was there a defining moment or one event that you remember back to that was the first time you realized that race was something that was going to be a part of your life?
Man.
Maybe your first fight, maybe somebody calling you a name, whatever it might be.
See, like that's the funny thing, because like spending half my year, like in Astoria, like, it's like a fishing town, and it's very country, and you learn to just play outside, like in the woods and stuff. Mm-hmm. I honestly can't remember experiencing anything like that there, like ever. And it really honestly wasn't until like I moved to with my grandparents, and there was a kid, he was new to our school, and like I tried to befriend him, just like I would with anybody, like I went up to him, we kind of hang out and talk and chat and stuff like that. And he even came over to my house a couple times. We'd played video games or G.I. Joes or Space Jam or NBA Jams or whatever, right? And, I thought we were close, and, like I thought we were cool and everything. And one day at school, he was another kid that called me a nigger again. And just at that time, when anybody would call me that, I was gonna fight.
Yeah, it's go time.
I was just gonna fight, because I mean I wouldn't do that now, but just then I was just so angry, and I had so much built up anger, and man, like I grabbed him and I threw him down and I punched him, and principals came, and I got suspended from the school. Then I got sent home, and I was grounded and this and that, and like I'm going to my grandparents who are doing the best job they can, and like I'm trying to explain to them, hey, so and so called me this, and they just didn't fully comprehend it. And then when I got back to school, a week later or whatever, I talked to the kid, and he never really apologized. Basically what he said was he's heard his dad call people that, so then he just thought it was okay, basically just to refer to people like that. So, and
he didn't understand the gravity of what he was saying.
He probably didn't know he was going to get his ass beat down either.
Yeah. And I mean, there was multiple times, like that, where things like that, would just happen, where people would, try to come up to me and tell me, racist black jokes and things like that, and think it's funny, but
no, it's hitting you at your core.
Yeah.
So as you've went through that growing up, high school, and in your 20s, and now you're in your 30s, how has that affected you mentally? When did you know that you, like that you're like, hey, I need to get in and talk to somebody because this is really bogging me down? Yeah. When did that come up for you?
For me, I ended up going to like a school for basketball, like in Northeast Portland, and it was just very different. It was very diverse. There was lots of black people, on the team and stuff like that, and Spanish people and stuff like that. And it was great. Like it was a really good experience. I had never, really experienced that, until that point. But I never really honestly realized the things that happened to me as a child, honestly, until therapy like this year.
Really?
Wow.
So that big of or I guess not big, but that long of a time period for you really to grasp that for yourself.
Definitely, because I just think, as men, you're taught just to be an alpha male. You're taught to never show emotion. When I was a child, I would, like I'd be down in Astoria with my grandma's parents, who were from Sweden, and
No, because my family came over
Okay.
and they're from Napa and Swenson.
Okay.
Your
Yeah.
family came over on the Mayflower, dude.
They came over to Ellis Island and
Okay.
then they went
Yeah.
to Swenson and Napa,
Yeah.
and my
There you
whole
go.
family's from Astoria, so I have a lot in common there.
It's funny because I was in grade school one time and I was talking about my family tree, and like the same thing happened. Like my teacher just started laughing and he was like, I just realized we're related or something like that. And he's like, my family owns this such and such hotel. And so it was just interesting. I forgot what else.
No, just
No,
the
you're fine.
when you're a child in Astoria.
Oh, yeah.
You mentioned that you didn't feel that
Yeah.
in Astoria, but when you went to Milwaukee,
Yeah.
you did. Was it because you felt Astoria was more of a family community and you were accepted from the
Yeah.
point you were born? Or
Definitely.
is it just people in Milwaukee were different in the way they just existed?
So I just think that like you would think like it'd be the opposite, but I mean, maybe it was because I was just so young and I just didn't notice it. I have a lot of family down there, and they all work at one of the local fisheries and stuff like that. So I mean, the people in the town know them and stuff like that. But yeah, like I really never felt racism or anything like that, until I started going to grade school and junior high, and I just feel like, those things kind of just carouseled on, later in life. But yeah.
Compared to when you were a kid and now, how would you categorize your experience with racism? Do you think it was worse then, or do you think it's worse now? Are we making positive steps forward?
Yeah.
Because whether it's COVID,
Yeah.
whether it's television, we have all kinds of different factors that play into that.
Yeah.
What is your take on that as
Yeah.
somebody that experiences it?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, just for me, like I'm speaking, just from my experience. I'm not talking, for all black people or Mexican people or brown people or anything, right? And yeah, like I would say honestly that like because of COVID and everything, I'm definitely like around less people and stuff like that. So I'm seeing it less, but also, like when you turn on like Instagram or Facebook or whatever, that stuff is still there. It's still out and stuff like that. And I just think, like I said, I have a 16-year-old son, and his mom is white. And one of the things like that I remember was with her one time. We were standing at a bank, standing in line, just waiting to take some cash like out of the ATM, and she's just standing there spacing off, and I'm spacing off, and then I looked to the left, and on the left, like, there was some glass windows, from floor to ceiling, and there was a guy just standing outside, and he pulled up his sleeve, and he had like a swastika just tattooed like
No shit.
on his arm, and he was just standing there, and I mean, at that time, I was still angry. I mean, I was probably like 18 or something, and I went outside just to go talk to him, but I mean, by that time, he was gone, which I'm thankful for, because now seeing like all these people now getting shot and stabbed and killed and all this
Yeah.
stuff, I'm
Yeah,
just
it's
like,
crazy.
you never know. So just now, like my mentality, like my personality is just to be like, you got it, you know.
Because it's not about you, it's about them.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
You
the
know?
kids, that's the, one thing that I always impart on my kids is that when these other kids are acting towards them, a lot of
Yeah.
time that is a reflection of their parents.
Yeah.
And that kid that you got in the fight with that you
Yeah.
thought was your friend,
Yeah.
the parents made it okay,
Yeah.
which shows you that this goes back decades and decades, and we know that. But
Yeah.
to see it in real life, I can only imagine. And for me, the way that I have dealt with that, people used to call me Spork, and like the thing that you got at KFC. And I took a lot of shit when I was a kid. I was the fat handicapped kid, so I took a lot of heat. But that was the one thing that really stood out to me, like, that's just not right.
Yeah.
And no one gave a shit. There was no one that I could call or anything like that. I just had to eat it.
Yeah.
But I mean, they would put shit on my locker and things like that. And they would, in the senior hall, they would laugh, and because I would punch my locker because it angered me. And I am not like you, where
Yeah.
I would go fight people. I would internalize it,
Yeah.
and I'd chew on it, and I'd think less of myself, but I couldn't do anything about it. Like, you can't do anything about it. Like Mike can't. We are who we are. We were born this way, and come hell or high water, no one's words are going to change that. So I had to get to a point where, like, okay, I can't give them the satisfaction of watching me act out. So even though I would internalize it, I had to make sure that I wasn't angry about it, because then I would spiral into other things. But as you realize that it is not your fault, do you think there was a point where you did blame yourself for some of that? I mean, obviously, none of it was your blame, but you're like, why are these people treating me like this when I'm nice to them? I invited them over to my house, whatever it might be, where you gave yourself permission to be like, fuck them. If they don't like me for who I am, why do they care the way that I look?
Yeah. And again, it was literally like this year. Like I don't know, like like I listen to like a lot of like podcasts and stuff like that, and
I'm glad you listened to ours.
yeah, like I listened to your guys' first podcast and stuff like that, and it was just great. Like I heard some things that you guys touched on, and I messaged Mike, and I'm like, man, can I please get on your podcast? Like I want to get on and just chat. And so yeah, for me, like I go to therapy. Like I go to therapy once a week. Like I go like every Monday. And my therapist has really made me realize a lot about myself and a lot about life. And I've been able to open up and trust more and be more thankful, for life, for people. And, just to know that, like, not everybody's out to get me. Because, from all these life experiences, whether it's grade school, whether it's things with family, whether it's things with work or, ex-wives or whatever, like I kind of got the mentality that like I have to like have like, for lack of a better term, like a helmet and shoulders and thigh pads and stuff like that. And like I found myself wearing that all day, but then going to sleep with that too. And like at some point I really had to look at myself, like in the mirror and think like, you don't have to like, internalize everything,
and you don't have to carry it alone. That's the whole goal of our podcast is to get, like, you reached out, and I'm so glad that you did, because I love having you here. I love hearing your side of it, because I didn't know any of this about you, honestly. And I'm glad you're here. But like, that's why we do this, is so that we're not having to carry all this shit on our own, that we have other people to surround us and help us carry it. And then by talking about it, especially with your therapist, and then like in this type of setting, I think it's very therapeutic. I know it is for me. I don't know if it might be for you as well.
Definitely. I mean, so for me, like this is definitely different, because like I said, like I was always taught to just like, act like it doesn't bother you and just be tough and be like a rock, and like my great grandparents and my grandparents, would say like, if you cry, I'm gonna give you something to cry, cry about it, whatever, right? And then later in life, the same people are just like, why do you not show emotion? And you're like,
I was taught not to.
I was taught not to do
You
anything like that.
designed me this
yeah,
way.
yeah. So yeah, it's just interesting for me to think about, going from that child that had to fend for himself and constantly wear these shoulder pads and a helmet and stuff like that to just like
Or brass knuckles.
brass knuckles or
It's full contact living.
yeah, or maybe like Tanya Harding, have a bat maybe too,
Or a hubcap.
or a hubcap.
We could really wear out that joke if we wanted to. I got some stories.
Tanya, if you're listening, I'm really sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm not at all. When you think about therapy, and it sounds like you're fairly new to it, as Mike and I. Mike, how long have you been in therapy?
Which go around? Let's see.
Right.
On this time, I've been in probably about a year and a half,
Okay.
maybe 2 years with different therapists for different reasons. But I'm glad I went because I wouldn't be here doing this with you if not.
Yeah.
Honestly, I was ready to check out back in December, and I tried checking out in September of 2012.
Yeah.
Really?
So,
Damn.
and I didn't go to counseling or seek that out back then because, I didn't think I really had a problem.
Yeah.
Until
Realizing it
got
is
so bad.
Yeah, and that's a huge part for all of us. And again, why we're sitting here. If a guy can see the title of the podcast and just be like, hey, maybe they're talking about some stuff that I'm dealing with as well. But that point at which you say, I finally have had enough and I've got to ask for help. Otherwise, I risk checking out. That's something that is so powerful for us. It's almost like, okay, I'm obviously speaking for myself here, but the relief of taking the shoulder pads off, the armor, and allowing yourself to be wrong, to be vulnerable. I mean, Mike and I think we've
To feel something.
Yeah.
I mean, I have said that to my wife that I don't feel anything because there's no one that I know that has suppressed as much as I have until I let it out that I've suppressed so much. And then I meet Gary and I meet Mike and I'm like, holy shit, I'm not in this alone.
Right.
Was that something for you that helped you open up more with your therapist and other guys to be like, I'm not the only one that is enduring these things?
Yeah, and I think what you're saying is true. And these things need to be talked about. Because I think at times you think that you're the only one going through what you're going through, right? So you're just kind of putting yourself in a cage, and you're just thinking, oh, I can't go to Mike, because Mike's going to judge me, or he's not going to understand, or whatever. When Mike could be going through the same things, and then we just go down like a rabbit hole of possibly doing more, displacing, whether it's with drugs or drinking or women or, whatever you're doing, you're finding that minor relief, or whether it's with food. I mean, for me, like I've lost probably 60 pounds or something like that, because because I was sad. So I'd just go home and I'll just eat and I'd be like,
Emotional eating.
yeah. At one point, like I got off work and I lived probably 15 minutes away from my job, and I called my partner at the time and I'm like, hey, you want some pizza or something? And she'd be like, yeah, go ahead and get it. And then I'd get a pizza, and by the time I got home, it'd be gone, because I was just like,
Oh, I forgot to get it.
yeah, I was
I'll
like,
be right back.
My bad.
let me go ahead and get you a DiGiorno, I guess. Like, I don't know.
That's cold, man.
Yo,
That's cold.
Right. Right.
That's
yeah.
frozen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And I just think, I don't know, like there's just so many things we do that we really honestly don't forgive ourselves about, or if your friend came to you and said certain things about themselves, like you wouldn't judge them.
No.
But when it comes to you, you really hold yourself accountable, and like you don't, forgive yourself. And so I just think like those things are super important. And like I really honestly didn't realize how much I was carrying until this year. And like I was telling my therapist about my life and my like upbringing and stuff like that. And she basically just said, Gary, like, you were being abused as a child, you know, and
Absolutely.
and you weren't being treated fairly, you know. And I just think that
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
That feeling when somebody that you trust
yeah,
tells you that, and you're like, and you're almost like, well, no, I'm not. You almost
Yeah.
defend
Yeah.
the actions of the other people
Yeah.
because that is what you've done for so
Yeah.
long. And then you're like, you drop the baggage off, it all falls apart. You're like, holy shit, I was. And it's not necessarily that you have to retry the past,
yeah,
but that you accept that yeah, some fucked up shit happened,
yeah.
and I'm dealing with it now, and it's better now than tomorrow. I didn't do it yesterday, but at least I'm moving forward with it. But to hear a therapist say that, or anyone, doesn't have to necessarily be a therapist, but to have somebody give you that permission to be like, yeah, man, I endured some really, really messed up shit that I don't need to get into the details with anyone on, but this person knows the deep down secrets, and
they still care about me.
well, they validate the shit that you've probably questioned. I know I have
Definitely.
questioned the things in my past, whether it's, you know, I was staying home alone in second grade, which I was.
yeah,
But that was normal to me. And now you're probably finding that it was not normal, but you want to create this normal environment for your kids, for your partner, your family, whatever it might be.
yeah.
Is that something that has been hard for you?
Definitely. And you know, my backstory, you know, like I said, is you know, like I was raised by my grandparents. My mom, she just didn't want to be a mother. So basically, like,
Boy, you're unpacking a lot right there, man. I mean, that's tremendous.
yeah, and you know, so then at one point, her mom and dad adopted me. So, you know, then I moved in with her 3 uncles and her sister. And, you know, like at a very young age, you know, like I thought it was just, you know, like sibling, you know, rivalry or whatever, you know, and like my like uncle was just always picking on me like all the time, you know, like he would shoot me with paintball guns and BB guns and put like socks and rocks and stuff like that and hit me with and just all these things, you know, and I just thought,
How old is he? How much
man,
older?
he must be like 56 or 57 now, and
So
So
he's
he
about
was a
your
lot
age
older.
now.
yeah, and so yeah, and just, you know, like I like that was my environment, you know, like
Wow.
like I like, and to me that was normal.
Yeah.
Like it got to be honestly to where like I still do it now sometimes too, but like I'll sleep with my head under the pillow because he would come in and just like throw shoes at me or throw books at me or whatever. So I just like intrinsically just started doing that, you know, and it was just so interesting because that stuff now, like I'm still like unpacking that stuff now because
What's PTSD?
yeah, because I just didn't fucking trust anybody.
One therapy that I go through with my therapist, I don't
Yeah.
know if I mentioned it before on another podcast, but it's called ART. It's Accelerated Resolution Therapy. It was actually designed for PTSD veterans,
Yeah.
where they would take an event and basically they would have to relive it, but then they can change it, and it
Yeah.
all has to do with your eye movement.
Yeah. Wow.
Really?
Maybe talk to your therapist, and if she doesn't do it, I know someone that does.
Okay.
But I've gone through some snapshots
Yeah.
that I really don't care to talk about now,
Yeah.
but I can tell you offline.
Yeah.
But that has changed how I view that.
Yeah.
Now, when I think about that event, I don't think about it how it happened. I think about it how I rewrote it.
Huh.
And so the emotional toll that has
Yeah.
doesn't weigh me down anymore.
Huh.
So
Okay.
it's almost as a way you get to just release it and free
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But then you said this was your uncle, correct?
Yeah. My uncle.
Do you have a relationship with him now?
I talk to him probably once every 2 months, and like we're just so different now, and it's interesting because so that whole like, you know, dynamic, you know, life was just very it was just terrible. And I just think that my like grandparents were like scared of him, so they let him do anything, right?
Really? Like physically?
Oh
Or-
yeah,
Really?
yes. One time we were playing soccer, and like I like scored a goal, and I was cheering, and he pushed me down like on the ground and like broke my collarbone. Like another time too, like he sprayed my hand with the keyboard spray, right? It burned my
Yeah,
hand.
cold.
It burned my hand to where like I had to wear like a sock or a glove like on my hand, for some time. And just again, these are things that I just thought were common and normal, and like it wasn't until I became like a teenager, and like one time I had like a friend spending the night, and that same uncle like came upstairs like with a knife in his hand to like pretend like he was gonna like stab me or get me or something like that. And my friend was like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? And I'm like, oh, that's just him just being him, right? But it's like I told these same things just like that to my therapist, and she was like, Gary, that's child abuse.
Yeah.
Physical.
Yeah,
abuse.
yeah,
Emotional.
yeah,
Everything.
Yeah, and just so many moments in my life led like from that made me like what I am today. And I just think that for certain things, like I'm definitely thankful. Because that same uncle, he has never really had like a stable job. Like he'll work a job for a week or two and
Really?
and get a check to go out and buy the newest gaming console, and then he'll sit at home and play the game and stuff like that. And
No real connection with other humans.
no, not at all. And somebody even like on Christmas or whatever, like I would get like a present, like I'd get like a new game and put it down next to me, and it would just disappear.
Yeah.
And then I would find out that he grabbed it and pawned it and sold it. And then, so yeah, just those things, just that, made me not trust.
Yeah.
That made me not, believe in anybody. I just thought that everybody was.
Well, why would you? He's in your family.
Right. Yeah.
Why would you trust a stranger?
Right. So it's just story after story of things, like that. And like I said, he never really held a job. Like he never really accomplished anything, or he never, had like a long-term job or anything. And I worked with Mike, because like I started like a restoration and a mitigation company with my dad.
What was it?
Rainbow. Yeah. So at that point, I was working 80 to 100 hours a week. Like I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and then I'd work to 11 a.m. or 12 or whatever. Go home, talk to my partner for like a little bit, and go out and work on my business. Like I'd go out and do sales, and like I'd go out and try to meet as many people as I could. We'd get calls like in the middle of the night, and I would just go out and do it, right? And at that time, the way that I was justifying it to myself was, oh, so I'm going to do this because I have to be the opposite of my uncle.
Yeah. And I'm going to prove to him that I have everything that he wanted,
Right.
but you had to go do the work that he didn't want to do.
Yeah.
And you're basically running circles around him, and that's kind of I got you, motherfucker.
Yeah, exactly.
And you, even though that probably isn't maybe the healthiest way to deal with it, but it does give you, you're kind of elated to do it. Like, look, I'm working 2 jobs.
Yeah.
I have the capability to do even more if I really wanted or needed to. And you're still bumming, video games or stealing video games from kids. So that's one of those triumphs that you've got to make sure that when you kind of go to those bad places that you can recall those things. Because Mike and I have talked about that when we begin to run ourselves down, or we wake up and we're just kind of having a bad day, you've got to look at those W's. Now, in my opinion, that is one of the biggest W's you could ever have.
Yeah.
But whether it's, you did the 20 minutes of exercise that you planned on, do you think that was a motivating factor for you to start the business? I see that you kind of shift in your chair like, maybe I don't want to say, but because those are the things that when we do internalize so much of that, it becomes either a fire or it's a
huge
fire that we
motivator.
have to push or that we put out with alcohol, drugs, and things like that. But it sounds like you flipped it and you used it, but I don't want to answer that for you.
I've always benefited more from negative feedback, and it's all based because of that, because he was talking shit to me my entire life.
Yeah.
So I wanted to prove to him, that I can go out and travel and go to different countries. I wanted to prove to him, that I can go to college and graduate from college and, get married and start a business and do all these things. And even like as like a college basketball player, I always played better on the road. Like when the crowd was like talking shit to me and just like saying anything, because I've always just
fed off of it.
fed off of that. And it's all based off of that, and it's interesting, because I'm thinking, damn, I'm working 80 hours a week, 100 hours a week, I'm not really sleeping. I'm just doing, what I got to do. But just like you said, like, that's not good for you. Like, that's just another way of like displacing or like, masking yourself and your feelings and
You're coping.
Yeah. So yeah, I've always done better like in worse environments, and that was something too that I talked to my therapist about, and she was just like, because the way that I phrased it was I always do better in toxicity, and she was just like, no, you can't phrase it like that. You've got to say, when your back's to the wall, you're not going to quit. Like, you're not going to see the wall and turn around. Like, you're going to find a way to go through it. And, it's just a matter of finding something positive to make yourself go through it, rather than your stupid uncle that's 57 lives in a basement.
What made you get to, what made you seek out counseling?
So for me, I went to counseling as a child, and it just never really did anything, just because I didn't have the right, mindset. Like, I wasn't ready for it. Then I went to marriage counseling with my ex-wife, and again, like, it just didn't go well. And I found like a therapist that I went and I seen probably for a year, and it went well and things were going good. And, like, I found that I really wanted to like work on myself and improve on myself and figure out why I do the things that I do. And, why do I not trust people? Why do I, go to bed, with my shoulder pads on and stuff. And I kind of figured it out, and I started reading, different books and stuff like that. And, basically, just wanted just to be the best version, of myself. And I just think, just seeing my son too, like, I don't want him to feel like he's doing this alone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the nice thing is that, I can give you kudos, is a lot of what you're talking about, a lot of what I'm hearing, and we've experienced it, a lot of it is generational curses that have happened to our parents and our grandparents and our great-grandparents. It's been drawn down the line, and it's like, now you decided to say, nope, I'm putting my feet in the sand, I'm making a stop, I'm going to change it right now.
Yeah.
So Evan's going to see it when he's older, that, hey, if I have shit going on and I can't handle it mentally, I can go talk to somebody about it. And that's why I did it. I saw, Hunter just got home from school, but I'm not just doing it for myself, I'm doing it for my kids too.
Yeah.
Because if I don't lead by example, they're not going to have a fucking idea what to do.
Yeah, it's true, man.
That is the leading by example. And the generational curse thing that you brought up is something that I think a lot of people don't really think about. And in my family that I have observed is, or kind of how that has manifested itself, is that when bad behavior is excused, Gary knows exactly, and I'm sure you do as well, that these activities are, whether they're swept under the rug or they're the fear. It sounds like your uncle was a physically menacing person. Then we're not teaching the young people to stick up for themselves. That is one of my biggest issues, and I've talked a lot about it on here, is that I wanted to keep peace so much that it didn't matter what I wanted. My needs were just make sure no one freaks out and there's no fighting, and that the drunk people are safe. That's really what it boils down to. And so you see it, Mike sees it, and so everyone that's listening, if your family has that mentality where you've got the uncle that is maybe watching something that he shouldn't, or the aunt that is doing something she shouldn't, that
Or the dad or mom that's down in a bottle of Jack every night.
well, and that's where, like for me, that's where, my biggest thing was my dad was an alcoholic. He drank literally a bottle of whiskey every night.
Yeah.
But I couldn't bring myself to that point where you did. And that's where I look at you and I'm like, man, I really wish I could have done that. I could have stuck up for myself. And I had those conversations in my head. I would play the entire conversation out of how I'm going to say, Dad, you need to quit drinking, because I was 17 years old and I was capable of having that conversation, but I just couldn't do it. I mean, it would get to the point where I would walk up to him. The weather's nice out. And I couldn't do it. Whereas with you, it manifested in fighting. And so it's interesting how that dynamic plays out differently in each of us. And how we cope with that. Your coping was, I'm going to fight you. You called me something that I do not deserve to be called, so I'm going to beat your ass. And I just hid. Now, I'm not physically. I've never been afraid of physical confrontation. That is not something that bothers me whatsoever.
You did, because you hid in your body.
Yeah. Oh, no. In my mind, though, I completely retreated. And allowed the people to, oh, Dad's just having another drink. Ha, ha, ha. Well, as he's stumbling and falling down on the fucking ground, that's not normal. And he did it 4 other nights this week. Or, my grandfather was an alcoholic as well. And I didn't know that because it was hidden until I was older. And then I very, very much became aware of it. And so it's interesting how we all, Mike, what is something that you have kind of, as Gary and I have shared, that is it something that you can connect with as well, where you were like,
oh yeah, I turned to, internet just came out and porn was easy to find. So I turned to that. And I mean, I think we actually should have a conversation on that, because it's so socially, or society says it's not a big deal.
Oh,
it's a huge deal.
Oh, definitely. That's a whole podcast right there.
Oh,
it's probably
that's a series of podcasts.
10 podcasts. But anyway, like I turned to that and I turned to food. And my thing was kind of like with your coach. Mine was my stepdad. And he said, you're never going to amount to anything when you grow up. And
that's so.
And he said that in front of my girlfriend, which was my oldest daughter's mom at the time. Or she wasn't her mom then, but that's who it was in front of. And she was like,
"It's crazy."
I
can't believe he said that. And
out loud.
But growing up with him, that was him. And that's how he always was. Like it kind of in a way, I felt like how Cinderella does with her stepmom, where she's forced to do everything, but the other kids don't have to do shit. That's what my stepsister was like, and my stepbrother. And like I had to do everything.
It's crazy.
And if it wasn't done perfect, then I had to go do it again. And again and again. And that's when you'd be like, you're just never going to amount to anything.
Because he was setting you up for that failure.
Oh,
and I think all 3 of us can sit here and think back to people that have done that to us. I mean, Gary's
that's the one
already
that stands
shared
out the most to me. So food but why I was getting back to that was he also controlled the food that was in the house. So if my mom would go to Costco, they had the big old bag of Marshmallow Mateys. Remember that kind of cereal? It's like Lucky Charms. And it would be in the pantry, but there would be a lock on the door.
It's crazy.
And so when I got a job, when I turned 16, I had a car, I bought my car. I quit playing sports because I needed money to pay for a car and gas and insurance and stuff like that. And then when I got a job and I had my own money, he couldn't tell me what the fuck I couldn't have. And so all that stuff I wasn't allowed to have as a kid, I turned to when I had my own stuff. So, and I would remember sitting in my room and he'd be, down watching TV or whatever. And I'd go like Albertsons. So I worked at Albertsons, and right after Christmas time, and I think this is where my weight kind of just took off. Is they had a clearance on all the peanut butter or the M&Ms, the peanut M&Ms.
Oh, no.
After Christmas time.
Oh no!
They had a whole cart full.
You too, huh?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And
Me three.
that was where my food addiction started. Was because he told me I couldn't have this, so I'm like, fuck you, I'm gonna go have this.
Man, for me it was the back when I was a kid, like they had like the like 39-cent cheeseburgers like in
Oh, yeah.
McDonald's.
Back in the day, for sure.
Go there and get like, it was like they had like a maximum of like 10 or 15 or something like that, man.
$3.90.
Yeah, I would go through the drive-through 3 times and go home and freeze them and eat them and just, yeah, I mean, you couldn't tell me anything. Like, yeah, it was the same thing. Like you didn't realize, what you're doing to yourself, but
Because we think we're doing it to them,
Yeah,
but we're really
yeah.
just hurting ourselves.
exactly.
Oh, I'm basically an amalgamation of both of you, because I had a situation where a McDonald's employee said to me as I went through for the third time that day, "Boy, you must really love McDonald's." And I'm not shitting you. It might as well have stripped me naked and run me through the gymnasium at an assembly, because
Yeah.
I was so embarrassed.
Yeah.
But I wasn't allowed to have sugar soda when I was a kid.
Wow.
I was only allowed to drink one diet soda.
Okay.
So when I was 16 and I had my own truck,
Yeah.
I would go down to the little mini mart by my high school, and I would buy a liter of soda. Shout out Super Troopers, and some ho
Liter of
hos.
cola.
Liter of cola.
Come on.
A whole liter.
Come on, meow.
Yeah. Oh wow. But it was grape or strawberry Fanta or whatever
Okay.
it was,
Yeah.
and a chocolate bar or donuts. And this was before I paid any attention, but it was a giant fuck you to everyone that told me that my fat ass, because I was put on diets. My dad had me on a liquid diet at one.
Wow.
I mean, all kinds of crazy shit, because I needed to lose 10 pounds. And anyway, so we all manifest these demons in ourselves in different ways, but food is something that is so readily available, and now it's in front of us, and we can't get out, or we couldn't last year. We couldn't get out and be active. We had to be away from people and wallow in our own darkness. And that's something that, I mean, we could do.
That's what really shook me up, is like being a social person, being forced to stay in my house or away from people sucked. And I'm like, I got to do something. So that's when and my mental state was going down fast.
Wow.
And so once that started going down, and I had marital problems and all that stuff, and now that's a divorce, like, I'm like, man, I got to do something for myself. And that's why I got into counseling. And I'm so glad I did, because we're doing this.
Yeah.
You're here now.
Yeah.
I mean, this was our coffee conversations.
Yeah,
That
for
turned-
hours.
That turned into this.
That's
Our
good.
coffee conversations would go for like 3 hours. I'm like, oh shit, I just missed a meeting.
Right. And
So-
like for me, like I love to hear this, like I feel like these things need to be talked about, and like it's not even really a matter of like, getting into your deepest and darkest secrets and stuff.
Not at all.
But just to fucking talk to people, like you never know, like what your words, could mean to somebody else, or or if somebody else could be going through that, because for me now the job that I work at, like I tell everybody that I go to therapy. Like I tell them,
it's a badge that you wear.
yeah, for me it's a badge, right? But I've told people and they're like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, or like, oh, you're trying to be like, your heroes and stuff like that. And I'm just like, no, like I'm telling people because like I want it to be deemed as, I don't know, like you never get looked at, as crazy, if you tell somebody that you're going to get your oil change in your car or a tune-up or something like that, like, and that's how I view it. Like
It's maintenance.
you're doing self-care to yourself.
And it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
they're so stuck in their,
Yeah.
I gotta bury it. I don't need to talk about the shit. Nobody needs to know about my problems.
Man, and for me, like
That's the biggest
like, like especially like with my like black male friends, they will not go to therapy. And
Do you think that's a race thing, or is it a
Is it a
mentality?
cultural thing?
Yeah, culture. I guess that's a
yeah, like
better way to put it.
I definitely think it's like a cultural thing, but I think it's a male thing as well too.
Oh, definitely.
Like I just think it goes back to I'm gonna give you something to cry about, so then you don't cry, and then you learn too that you have to be this strong male figure, and like for me, my ideology of being strong, is never crying. And it's one of the things that I talked to my therapist about too. She was like, when's the last time you cried? And I'm like, man, I haven't cried in years.
When my son was born, I had to cut the cord.
Yeah.
And like, oh shit, I'm a parent now.
Right. And just like, yeah, like, you know, she really had me thinking, like, when's the last time that I cried? You know, and something else she asked me was, who do you trust?
That's a huge question for you, I bet.
And I looked around and I was just silent, you know, and like I really had to think about it, and I'm like, I don't trust anybody. I don't. And like, I don't want to say that, you know, it's sad, you know.
It
and
sucks to say that.
Yeah, and I'm just like, I just don't, you know, and like, you know, like I'm definitely getting better, you know, like I'm definitely working on it and stuff like that. And I just think that just based off, you know, the things that you've said, and based off the things, you know, that you said, you know, books and stuff that I've read, like I love to read now, and, you know, I'm listening to podcasts and stuff, and it's good to hear men talking about these things. And like, I want to take my experiences, your experiences, and your experiences, and just tell people that it's okay to cry.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and it has nothing to do with your masculinity or anything like that. And in a lot of ways, you know, I relate to, and we're about it, or we want to wrap up because everyone listens to us, and an hour is a long time. But
oh, definitely.
But we think about the toxic masculinity, and Mike and I have talked about positive masculinity being when you engage in this and you make yourself better. That's what, I mean, talk about being an alpha male. Mm-hmm. An alpha male is somebody that is in absolute control of themselves, not somebody that relies on intimidation or has slayed the most ass or whatever you want to say. Those have nothing to do with being an alpha. They have to do with being actually fairly weak because you can't control your urges. Yeah. That's what the definition of an alpha is. You've got control. Yeah. You are a cool cucumber.
Yeah, and that's so true, because it's like, from the guys, you know, like that I've been around, like you're deemed cool, you know, if you can, you know, sleep with as many girls as possible, you know, if you can, you know, figure out ways to screw the system or
manipulate
something like that.
People.
And it's interesting just to think about that and think back and just think like, those things are not cool.
No.
Well, and you look at today's society, if we were as kids taught that it's okay to cry, okay to, you know, just sit and deal with your knee that you scraped up and not rub dirt on it and go back at it. Yeah. We probably wouldn't have the gang problems that we have today. Yeah. We probably wouldn't have all these fatherless homes that guys just are so emasculated that they just check out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
And they don't want to accept responsibility for their actions, whether that's parenting a kid.
It's somebody else's problem.
Yeah. And we have seen that it's been okay. You know, we talked about the family, you know, sweeping things under the carpet. Well, society is sweeping things under the carpet with Instagram profiles that everything is curated and looks perfect. Well, no, you don't look like that. Get up, you motherfucker. You better take that stupid filter off there. Yeah. But we're being presented with an altered reality. And when we sit there and that's what we're doing, is we're engaging in reality, and reality sucks sometimes. Yeah. And there is some bad things that happen in reality, but it's not something that we can't move past. And if we're willing to accept that it occurred and recognize that we need to get better, because I've told my kids, I'll give you something to cry about. I'm hand up. I've done it. Yeah. But now I realize, hey, there was no reason for me to do that at all. Yeah. And that's part of maturing as well. I mean, we had to be of this age now where we're willing to say, maybe I don't have it all figured out, and maybe some of those things that occurred to me were pretty messed up.
Yeah. I just think for me, like something like that I learned is like, you can't heal what you don't reveal.
I like that.
And you know, it's just again, just talking about things and just being okay with not being okay. You know, like, we're all flesh. You know, we all have our things to work on, and there's nothing wrong with going to therapy. There's nothing wrong, you know, with going to your brothers and friends and saying, I'm fucked up today, man.
Mm-hmm. You know what? Somebody asked me the other day, they go, why are you doing this podcast? I said, well, honestly, I want to change the world. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to be able to do it by voting because my vote doesn't matter. No. But what I can do is change it one person at a time, and hopefully it spreads like wildfire.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how I can change the world.
Yeah. That's true, man.
So,
if it takes one person at a time, that's fine.
I mean, you're here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love being here, and I hope to be back here again.
Absolutely. Well, and that's what I was going to say is as we wrap up, we definitely want to have you back and expand on some of these topics that are difficult conversations to have.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't have to necessarily be about race, sex, or anything like that. It's just three guys from three different backgrounds talking about whether it's family, whether it's partners, whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. If we get people out there listening to it and just what you said, man, I went through that.
Yeah.
Then it's all right to open up about it.
Yeah.
With that, Mike's doorbell just rang. Is there anything you want to shout out? Anything that you want to let anyone know about?
So I don't know. Just the main thing is just like, I just want people to know that like therapy is a good thing. Healing yourself is a good thing. Just sitting down and just really reading a book, sitting down and just, doing things, that you enjoy. And I mean, for me, like I just want to say how thankful that I am just to my therapist. Her name is Cheryl Hamilton Jefferson. And the things that she has taught me, the things that she has showed to me and just made me realize, that it's okay to cry, that it's okay to sit here and talk about these things. Like, I want other people just to know that, because I want everybody just to work on themselves and just be the best possible versions of themselves that they can be. And this is how you do it.
One step at a time.
Yeah, exactly.
And it will not happen overnight.
Yeah.
No. I would love to see a panel of just guys from different backgrounds sit around and talk about this stuff and get asked questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we all have questions and we never want to compare our trials and tribulations to somebody else because that's a slippery slope. But to hear what you've gone through and what Mike has gone through, which is drastically different than what I've gone through, and I'm sure it's vice versa, is I love learning. And that's what this is all about. Yeah. I'm learning about you to help me learn about myself.
Yeah.
Mike, do you have any last words for us? Anything you want to shout out? Anything going on?
No, I think I'm okay. I mean,
and it's all right that you're not okay. Yeah. Wait, no, you said you're okay.
Okay. No, I said I'm okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, I'm just glad this is happening, and I'm glad more people are listening and reaching out. Mm-hmm. Because I think these talks need to happen. Yeah. And it's encouraging. It's encouraging that we can have these discussions and not feel judged or, pushed aside in a way.
No, so. and that I don't care now. If somebody looks down on me or wants to make it, I could not care less. And it took me a long time to get to that point where I'm not getting my value out of somebody else's opinion because that's what my entire life when I was younger revolved around. Yeah. So, well, let everyone know ManVsMood, Facebook, the Facebook page, post your questions, your comments, anything like that you'd like us to discuss because I have a feeling Gary's going to be joining us for far more podcasts.
Please.
Heck yeah.
Please, guys.
ManVsMood on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. The next time we're going to be set up for video. So we've got two guys that got faces for radio, but Gary's a little bit better looking than us. So
Gary's got those freckles.
Yeah, he's got that going on. So
hey, ladies, are you single, Gary?
Yeah.
Oh, Gary's.
So
look at Gary getting blushing over here.
I'm blushing.
No, at least we've got some eye candy now on the podcast. So. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Gary, thank you for joining us, and I think this is the beginning of something great for all of us. So,
thank you, guys.
Mike, thank you very much. We gone.